Welcome to Path Forward. This podcast is for two kinds of people, Rob. One kind, the kind that are kids that are just starting their career. I call them kids, young kids trying to figure it out what path to take in a world that feels louder and more confusing. Back in the day when you and I, well, I'm a little bit older than you, but we didn't have all this social media, all this noise, right? So that's one audience. The other audience is executives who may be thinking about switching careers, doing a 360, considering, a different job. I've had the fortune to interview thousands of executives, and what's ironic is like the answers to these questions are the same. People are looking for the same sort of answers, the same sort of guidance. So that's why you're here, Rob. I'm so glad that you are our first guest in Path Forward. You have such an intriguing career, intriguing background, and we're going to dive into some questions here. But to open up, let's just ensure that you don't overthink the questions, right? Anything that intuitively comes out it's what's going to resonate with folks. Um, so let's start with where everything started. Tell me, where were you born and raised?
Yeah, I'm a northerner, so I grew up in Minneapolis, but I spent a lot of my time at my cabin in a very remote area of like northern Minnesota, about 100 miles from Canada. And so I think a lot of that shaped me as well. But yeah, started out in Minnesota, went to University of Wisconsin, and yeah, randomly fell backwards into Brooksource. I think that's a really good story of how I found my my career. And with that said, obviously, maybe it's clear looking backwards, but it sure as hell wasn't clear looking forwards. And so yeah, I'm
Yeah.
a northerner. Been in Texas now 10 years. Well, maybe not Texas, but Austin, different than Texas. And Texas forever is my motto currently.
Texas forever. Tell me about your childhood, siblings. What was it like? What kind of kid were you?
Yeah, I think the undercurrent of my background is like I was very independent. Like I grew up at that cabin in a lot of like remote nature alone. And so I think I learned two things really early on in life. One was like it's gonna all be about work. I think when you're around nature, you kind of realize like you can get away from the noise and you realize like what's the truth, and the truth is like nature and our place in it maybe isn't what we think it is, meaning like, and you mentioned all the distractions like social media and all these things, like that's not reality. Like nature is reality. And so I learned that work was kind of the only way to get what you want in the real world. And nature, I think, really emphasizes that. And so I think that was a key piece of my childhood and undercurrent. Otherwise, I was in special education till like the end of third grade. And so I remember leaving school at the end of third grade. It was last day before summer, and I'd nearly never been in the general population, normal kids or whatever. And the next year, fourth grade, I was going to be with the normal general population. And that's again this undercurrent of like work. I was like, okay, well, obviously I don't have like an advantage with my IQ. I just learned differently. Not that my IQ was low, I just couldn't speak and had different, yeah, awakening moments, maybe later than others. With that said, yeah, that's where I was like, okay, if I'm gonna be with the general population, I'm gonna have to have a differentiator, like get up to speed or like have something so I don't fall behind. And like work again was the undercurrent. So work was like a huge, just yeah, vision for me. I always knew life would be a lot of work. And my sister, you asked about siblings. Yeah, I mean, she was a great groomer, a great person for me to have a role model around. Like she's always best friend currently, great relationship with your siblings, I think is really important. And she was a huge piece of like helping me channel my work to the right things.
So besides your sister, like who had the biggest influence on how you saw work, creativity, or leadership as you grew up?
Yeah, I think everyone say their parents are like, oh, well, my therapist says that every child has trauma, right? It's just about finding the trauma. And I think that's where like this work thing came from. My dad was like a mass outdoorsman, right? Like, so we lived in this very remote area. I'm talking like if you wanted water, you're getting it from the lake. If you
Okay.
wanted heat, you're chopping wood to fuel a fireplace. Like I'm talking like a very remote cabin. It got electricity when I was like maybe 13, 14, but like that's the memories I have in my head, right? Of my dad like basically doing the work to keep this home heated in with water, so to speak. And if you needed food, like we would go hunting for the food. Like it was very, very remote. And so, but I think my dad was the figure of like, again, if you want to get what you want, you have to work for it.
Wow. Okay, tell me more about this hunting thing. What did you hunt? Like, how old were you when you like caught your first prey?
Yeah, mostly deer, ducks, and fish. And so A lot of those you need license for, and there's actual seasons, but when you're that remote, like you don't really necessarily need all the
Yeah.
licenses, and it's all on our property. We had a huge estate up there, so a lot of it was Venice, a lot of deer for the winters. But with that said, I'm not a big hunter now. I just kind of like I get how hunting makes you closer to your food than like factory farming does in a grocery store. Like, so of course I like hunting for that
Yeah.
perspective, but I also think I don't, you know.
You are a big hunter still, and that this is why I love to hear, people's backgrounds. I didn't know that about you. Now it explains it all. How when you have a goal and you go after it, um, resilience, and you get there. Tell me about your first job where you actually got paid.
Nice. Yeah. It was a grocery store. So I run a retail strategy right now for Brooksource, and it all started pushing carts. And so yeah, worked there from 14. You could work in Minnesota. I started at 14, and yeah, I worked there throughout college and everything. So started as the cart guy, pushing and through the sludge and the snow in Minnesota, and then made my way up to cashier, and then made my way to produce, and then stocking. Yeah, the shelves in the middle of the store. Like I've kind of done the full tour, but it was a different time then. Like it was such a neighborhood feel of the store, right? Like it was more about the social experience and the social immersion you got and getting to know people and what they liked, and you could very much so interact with people because you'd meet them multiple times,
Yeah.
a month. And so it felt like a different neighborhood, a different time for sure.
You remember your first team leader, boss, supervisor?
I do.
Tell me more about, this person. Was it hard? Did you learn like anything, anything that you remember from that person?
Yeah, have had a lot of great bosses in my life. I feel like a lot of great leaders around me. And obviously people follow the leader. That it's not necessarily about the job, it's about who you work for and who you work with. But my first boss was not that person. My
Okay.
first boss was very much so very black and white. Didn't allow for a lot of autonomy or ownership, and showed love through hazing and yeah, nitpicking, and there wasn't a lot of like personal depth and a lot of attachment to the role because of those things. And so I think that's maybe you either like become the boss that you see in front of you, or you run away and you become the exact opposite. So I think
Yeah.
a lot of the lessons I learned was in do the opposite of my first
And
boss.
but stay there. What was your motivation? How did you stay engaged? Maybe you were not as engaged, but you had the job. How did you stay resilient and not quit?
It's a great question. I still have like dreams. I actually had one last week about like I cared so much about this first job, this grocery store job when I was a teenager, that like I'll have dreams that I like don't forget to punch in, and like I missed my shift,
Yeah.
or like I'll be at a friend's house and my car breaks down and I won't be able to get to the store, right? And so like I obviously there was an undercurrent of care and ownership there, and I think that just goes back to like and it's weird because I am in a role, started in this company I'm currently in 2011. It's 2025. Like I've been here 14 going on 15 years. Like why haven't I left, and why didn't I leave the grocery store job? Specifically if I didn't have like a great boss. And I think it just goes down to like again back to like ownership of the craft, or feeling like I have a responsibility to work and feel like I have like that I can create my own little ecosystem. And so this grocery store, like I didn't have a great boss, but I certainly got to like own my aisles of the store and do the inventory and do the scanning, and like I felt like I had the ownership. So I think that's my current role too. Like there's great parts of it and there's parts of it that are challenging, but I feel like I get to own my own little ecosystem. I get to be in control. It all comes back to control for me.
Say more. I love that because in this day and age, in this world, so many things that are backwards. It's hard. But if you can control what you can control, give me more examples of those things that you can control. And by the way, 15 years in a job, you don't see that very often anymore. What are some of the things that you can't control?
Can't?
You can, that you as a it could be at work, it could be in your personal life, but give us some examples of those things, regardless of what's happening outside.
Yeah. I think the undercurrent of all this is probably stoicism, right? Like if you ask me to describe stoicism, it's basically focusing on what you can control, not focusing on what you can't, and trying to like back up from all the noise and other perspectives and emotions that you have to figure out, like again back to my nature thing in the beginning. It's like what's the true position of where you're at in nature? Like what's your true purpose, or more so just where do you fit into nature in the bigger picture of things. And a lot of that is about like we actually have a very relatively small group of things we can control. And so focus on that. What can't you control? Majority of it. Like I think that's, the 80-20 rule. I think 80% of things you can't control. And for me, that goes back to like, again, being very independent and individualistic. And I still am. And very much so in tune with like the nature thing. Like those are the things you can control is yourself and your perspective and your mind. And so, yeah, the big thing I see people not controlling now is like their mind that they can control, right? Like we get carried away with emotion, we get carried away with ego, we get carried away with trying to have a identity around certain things. And I think that's what people can control that they probably think they can't. Obviously we know
Yeah.
we can control if we go to the gym. We can control if we invest in relationships, which obviously is like probably the main purpose of life. We can control all these things that we're aware of, these physical things, but like the mind, I think, is the big thing where stoicism really helps to back up and be like, hey, you can't control this. Focus on what you can.
Yeah. How do you invest in relationships?
Oof. This is a weak spot for me. So I map out my goals very like I've mapped them out since 2012. And so every year I'll like add a layer. It's like rings on a tree. And so my goals kind of get more honed in. And relationships are I have a lot of them, and I'm really blessed and grateful and all the things. And I think I maybe invest in a more untraditional way in my relationships. But I have my strategy around relationships, not that I'm like trying to be strategic or anything, but genuine and raw and authentic is to be very genuine, raw and authentic. Like that is the whole path to create relationships to me is not necessarily interact a ton and with small talk, but interact very in depth and with the right people. And so, yeah, I've tried to maybe make myself maybe more relatable, and that's probably where I'm going with my like vision for my relationships and my goals around relationships is maybe be less intense and
Yeah.
be, more small talk related, but I really like the depth.
Yeah, sometimes it's hard to answer questions related to something that you don't see from the outside, but I'll give you the answer or one of the answers. Um, Looking at it from the outside and having had the pleasure to meet a lot of people everywhere, there are people who have this kind of energy, right? And it's consistent. And you are one of those folks, right? You have this energy that's contagious, welcoming, whether when you're at work or when I run into you at Taco Deli or when we're talking. And that energy just attracts, I mean, some people may gravitate towards talk to you, but it creates a safe space, I would say, right? When you have that kind of energy. All right, Rob, let's
Well,
switch
real quick,
gears.
I do want to comment on that. You mentioned the safe space, and I think like if I look back and what I maybe would have done differently with my relationships, but what I'm naturally leaning into now is just like, and if I was a younger person, what my strategy would be for relationships, and I think it'd all be around curiosity. You don't have
Okay.
to be the most charismatic person. You don't have to have the best story. You don't have to have the right answer. You don't need to be cool and all the things. If you're just curious in the other person, naturally curious, it can't be, manufactured, but if you're naturally like care and you're curious about other people's story and what they think and how they feel and all the things, like you're naturally going to have the energy you were just talking about. So curiosity is kind of the
Love
silver
that so
bullet.
much. Such a like valuable snippet because I could not agree with you more. Um it has to be natural. You have to learn to become a curious person, right? Okay, let's switch gears. More light, rapid fire sort of questions. Don't
Nice.
think about it too hard.
Lightning round.
Lightning round. Best purchase you've made under $100.
Under $100. This is a great Tim Ferriss question. Man, I'm so old. Pillows. You
Pillows.
can't beat pillows. Sleep. Sleep's the most important thing, and I didn't know that until about like 5 years ago. But sleep controls my entire energy levels and how I feel and my entire outlook on the world. So I got a really good pillow.
What about under $500?
This Aura ring. Again, it all goes back to health. It's, what is the quote? A man who has good health cares about everything. A man who doesn't have good health only cares about one thing. So I like Aura Ring just to keep me grounded around my sleep, like I mentioned, but also my
Uh-huh.
activity and, what my readiness is and just kind of makes the body adjust to what's actually going on in the inside.
I love that. And there are other devices like the Woot and other things that will help
Whoop,
you
Apple Watch, all the
move
things.
that power.
I'm a ring guy.
This is mine. I'm gonna show you mine. Little
What is
helmet
that?
with with lights.
That's fancy. Oh, that's your best purchase for under 100 or That's more than $100.
And, under 500, it's not, but it does.
Keeps you alive.
It's yeah, it keeps you alive. What about 10,000?
Best purchase for under 10,000 bucks? I don't know if I've had a big purchase like that. Let me think. Hang on. What's a purchase? This makes me actually really happy because I'm realizing that the things that make me happy aren't things.
Yeah.
Mostly trips. Yeah. Vacation. I've spent a lot of money on travel over the last 15 years. Probably what I've spent, yeah, outside of real estate, the most money on my house. And I don't regret any trip I've ever taken, even though if they've been bad. I had a really bad trip to Santa Fe last like, Christmas or holiday time, and I still don't regret it because I think you always come back with layers. It makes you richer, as they say. Travel's the only thing you can buy that makes you richer.
Oh my gosh, love that. Um, are you more of a morning person, afternoon, or night?
As my Aura ring would say, and I'm an early chronotype. I never set an alarm, but I always wake up. Today was 4:52 or something like that. So very much so. I'm a hunter, as you mentioned, and so I think I naturally get up and go. And I mean, the first thing I do when I wake up is my morning routine is very consistent at this point. It's drink two 14-ounce glasses of water, double espresso, and then I stretch every single morning. I got the double espresso for you today.
There we go.
My guy, Colombian brew, of course.
Only the best. And then you stretch. Uh, take me more through that morning routine. That's unique to people. I mean, waking up early, some people can do it fine, but what else do you do in the morning before you start like going at it at work?
I think everyone preaches have a good morning routine, right? And I've done a lot of research on it too. And it is true, like for 80% of the population, they're a similar chronotype to me with how they evolved. And so they should be morning people. You should stop being lazy and you should get up and you should eat the frog, as they say in the morning. Be active, do the hard things, and get moving early. With that said, there is like 20% of the population that naturally, based on their chronotype and how their genetics evolved, that they're more of a night owl. So follow your genetics is what I would say. But for the majority, for the vast amount of people, you should be a morning person. And my routine, yeah, so definitely tons of water, tons of hydration, tons of stretching. And then I usually, yeah, work out, sorry. Um, Heavy lifting weights or running or do like something that's intense for 30, 40 minutes, not that long. And then I knock out the three most audacious or hairiest tasks of the day. And so, yeah,
At the beginning.
I usually, as I'm driving to work, yeah, I map out the first three things I'm going to do. It's the hardest call you have to make. Like if you have to give somebody tough feedback. Today was his podcast, like I wanted to be fresh for this. So I'll do that early. And then, yeah, what's my other big frog for today? I have to complete this very detailed financial reporting. I'm not a numbers guy, and so for me, that takes a lot of like mental will and horsepower to harness to do a bunch of data dives into financial information. So those are like my frogs this morning, if you will.
Yeah, but you're driven by finishing the report because a lot of people count on you for this, or your motivation is something that will make you do something that you're not naturally, you don't gravitate towards that naturally. And instead of trying to focus on, the financials, the numbers, because you get gravitated towards people, towards the relationships, towards ensuring that people are successful. Um, that's the way to think about managing, let's just say, a weakness, right? Because we all have to do things that we don't like or that we're not good at. And I always say you should always take jobs and find things that you love to do that are in alignment with your strengths. But regardless, you're gonna be in places. I do this all the time in my job, right? But the motivation is not being detailed with the numbers. It's doing it for the people that you love.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I want to comment on that. I totally agree. So I look at there's like a gauge, right? And so here's tasks that you can do on autopilot, very easy, like pushing carts at a grocery store. You know, you may enjoy that, but it doesn't take a lot of mental horsepower or challenge. At least for me, it didn't. Then here's tasks that are maybe challenging. And then here's tasks you can't do. Like you don't have the skill set or you're not trained to do them, or you're just not equipped mentally to do it. They say you want tasks right here, right at the edge of challenge and what you can't do, right? So you're constantly like stretched, and that's how you grow the gauge to be more challenging, less of things you can't do. To your point.
That's what you and I think alike, man. I love that. And the best analogy for this are like long distance races, like marathons, when you are challenged to the point where, it's hard, but you're in flow. But then you
Yeah.
accomplish that, man, nothing feels better than accomplishing that task, you know?
Then next is the Ironman or the
Oh
triathlon.
gosh. In your life, Rob, if your life had a soundtrack, what would be the opening song?
I am a score guy. When I say score, I mean movie soundtracks. So whether it's Interstellar or Inception or The Dark Knight, I'm a Hans Zimmer guy. I think it would be the opening track to The Dark Knight. Basically the undercurrent of the score is everyone starts high in life, usually, that's childhood to me, and then like
Okay.
they fall. At some point you fall, whether you mentally break or something tragic goes on in your life. Like, I'm kind of the protagonist of my own story. So the Dark Knight falls, right? And so then there's a rise. So you get to choose if you rise. So that's pretty dramatic, but
Like
but
it. No,
yeah,
it
Hans
fits.
Zimmer is great. I love the symphonies.
I'm very curious about this. What brand do you admire most and why?
I'm a retail guy, so I got a lot of answers for you here. There's two brands that come to mind. The first is Lululemon. I'm in Lululemon. I just realized head to toe. And what I like about the brand and Calvin, who was really the CEO who made the brand sticky, in my opinion, is they've made their clothes bigger than the clothes, and so they made it a lifestyle brand. Of course, every brand wants to be a lifestyle brand, but I think Lululemon, like I'm wearing these clothes so I can go like I'm on the green belt, so I can like run and work in this same shirt, you know. And I just like how they keep things modern and sleek, and like they've stayed true to like their Vancouver roots and haven't like extended that far beyond their traditional like this is where we started. They've stayed in their hedgehog, they've stayed in their lane. That one comes to mind. I'm also a
And
sucker for
quality, right? I mean,
experience.
the
Go,
quality of their
oh,
clothes are amazing.
yeah, that's how you know shit's real is you can how many times can you wash it before it starts to disintegrate? And
Yeah,
Lululemon, I mean, I've watched this cost per wear, baby. That's what I always say. How many costs do you get out of that? Or sorry, how many wears do you get out of it? It's not how much it costs.
got you.
Yeah.
Who do you admire most personally first and then professionally?
Ooh. Are these like celebrities or what's the
Well, that's the thing
classification?
about this conversation. It's up to your interpretation.
Who do I admire most? Well, that's a lot of answers here. Yeah. So you probably noticed about me is that I'm not one dimensional, but I have like one speed, which is go. And a lot of that's probably from my work background we were talking about and like the trauma from like that. This work used to be a differentiator for me. It was how I got to where I am today was working hard. But now my work ethic, I think it's like something that actually hurts me. I think it hurts me from having peace and being present and all the things. I'm constantly thinking about what task is next. And so when I look at like people I admire, it's people that have reinvented themselves, people that have been dynamic and evolved and moved and mastered their craft and then moved on, mastered their craft and move on. So constantly changing and reinventing themselves. So I do love Arnold for that. Obviously, he's done so many things, whether that's bodybuilding and movie star, then politician. Not that I
Mhm.
agree with his perspectives and views on everything, but the guy certainly has reinvented himself time in, time out. And the second thing I love about Arnold is his energy, right? You mentioned energy and naturally pulling people in and attracting them. I
Yeah.
think he's naturally oozes a positive energy that I think people like to emulate, and I'm one of them.
What about professionally?
I won't say the person's name, but they work in my company. I just in the
Describe the
corporate
work. Describe
I will
why
I
you
will
admire
describe
them.
them, yeah. I think what I've seen, and I have worked for one company for 15 years, but all I do is work with Fortune 500 companies. So I've seen a lot of different cultures. And so I'm really focused on the culture of companies. And there's a lot of warts I see in cultures. The main warts I see, the number one is ego. And so not making the best decision for the company, but making the best decision for themselves or that person to raise their career or to get attention or whatever it may be. So I look for people that are cognizant of their ego. Not that they have no ego. We all have egos, right? We all have these identities we're clinging to, but people that are very aware of their ego, um, that strikes me as thing number one that I emulate from this person I'm referring. The second thing is I love not hierarchy. I love like reverse hierarchy. Let me describe it. So here's a corporation. At the top, you have the CEO. On the bottom, you have the frontline worker, right? The person in the stores or whatever. I love what Home Depot did with flipping that. So the CEO, right? They support everyone above them. And we're ultimately all supporting the end associate, the person in the stores, because they're directly interfacing with the customer. And so when I think about great leaders, they're people that are people that I don't report to my boss. I report to the people that report to me. That's who I'm responsible for. And I definitely have that. I've been incepted with that. If my president of my company calls me, which he frequently does, I'll usually, if I'm with one of my direct reports or I'm with a customer, I will decline that call. versus the opposite of what you normally see in corporations is, oh, my boss is calling me, I gotta go. And so I really like that whole reverse culture. And the last thing I'd say is I like leaders that lead. But that what I mean is they're in front. They pull from the front. They don't push from the back. So leaders that don't ask you to do anything that they're not willing to do themselves. And so those are like the three things that really stick out to me
Love
from
them.
this leader that, yeah, resonate.
That's if I were to design an interview for your company, I would focus on that, and um, I will work backwards from that and design questions that will help me
Yes,
find people like that because that's what companies need to do. So that's the thing, in this world of noise and so much happening that a lot of companies don't take the time to do this well. Like interviewing, it's an art, and
I know.
and sometimes it feels like people want it shorter, quicker, and the less time that it takes, the better, when at the end, it should be, like, the most complex, most difficult, most time-consuming thing because at the end, it's one of the most important things that you can do for your company. But,
It's the
I
most
derailed. Don't
important.
get me started on that.
I
Uh,
Yeah, that could be a whole side rant we could have. Yeah,
yeah,
I won't go into it either, but yeah, hiring's the
um,
most important thing you could ever do. It's
I
also the most
agree.
important thing in life. And I say that
Hiring your significant other, hiring your team,
mm,
hiring, the people around you. It's just I love that we landed on this. But let's talk about travel. I There's another
okay.
section here called travel. What best country that you visited because you've learned a lesson? So think about best country because you learned this lesson. What lesson was it? What country was it?
Oh, lots of stories here. I had a fairly traumatic experience in Iceland recently. This is last summer. And so Iceland, it was like huts and things like that about 40 years ago. Now they have energy and tourism, but it's not very developed. But mainly one road around this island, and it's basically Hawaii of the North, but very underdeveloped. And so there's Reykjavik, which is all the way east, and then as you leave Reykjavik, it gets very sparse with population. And so anyway, I rented a very off-road vehicle, and it wanted to explore this uninhibited place. And so I got all the way to the furthest town west. And so east is where the population is, west is where I was. It was actually where they filmed Walter Mitty. Walter Mitty, there's this iconic scene where he's longboarding down a mountain going to a village, and he's just in this kind of like peak um, adventure mode. And so I wanted to like see this hill and things like that. And so I'm in this big truck, and my wife and I were arguing because I wanted to see it again because I love Walter Mitty. I love adventure. I love the movie embodies. And I'm like yelling at my wife, and I reverse back to like, I'm going to go. And I hit this huge rock. And so we're at about, I think, 10,000 feet. And so we're in the middle of nowhere, and I have hit this massive rock with this off road vehicle, this Land Rover. And so I get out. I'm like, of course, the bumper's all messed up and all the things. But I look and I'm like, there's this huge contusion on the tire. A contusion's almost like a cartoon where they have like the egg, someone gets hit in the head and they have this egg. Like this tire has this huge like egg on it. And so you look that up, it obviously means it could pop at any moment. There's no town, there's no villages. I have no tools to change this said tire, and I don't have flat ground to do it in. I mean, it's mountain, and so I've been practicing trying to be still and trying to be calm and all the things. Again, stoicism, back to controlling what you can control. And yeah, with my wife there is obviously emotional about the situation, rightfully so. And I'm in the wrong. I was the idiot that backed into a rock. And so just really proud that we stayed calm. We got to
Yeah.
the bottom of the mountain, down 10,000 feet. The tire did not pop. And, my wife started crying from like a release of like we made it. Went to an abandoned airport, and they were able to change my tire. I mean, again, there's no towns here. This is like an airport for people that need to be dropped off at fishing boats in the ocean. Like very, sparse again. So anyway, that was a great lesson, and I think our relationship got stronger for it, but very traumatic, and didn't start on a pretty note.
Wow. You see how you didn't bring up like this Sagrada Familia or some landscape that's so touristy, but that's what sticks in your memory, this whole like journey and lesson. And I love that at the end you said you and your wife came out of it, stronger because of the the overcoming of a very difficult, probably expensive too situation. But
Yeah.
let's um What about city? Do you have a favorite city and one thing that just feels that it belongs to you?
Austin, Texas. No, that's too easy. Austin does have a unique energy, and you know it. Austin is a very special place. It attracts a certain type of person, an open-minded person who is open to new things. But internationally, I'm really big on Amsterdam, and I think it's for a variety of things. One is the water. I think the water calms the soul. Like I'm a water sign. Not that I'm that big into like astrology and such, but water calms us all down, right? Like water's very therapeutic. So I think that the canals are such an abundant part of the smell and the scene and the view. I think that resonates. I also like that there's complete freedom there. You know, obviously you can do very debaucherous things there, and I'm not necessarily referring to that. Just like anything goes in Amsterdam, and that means with careers or with cultures or with the type of person you want to be. It's a very freeing place, and a lot of Europe is like that. But I think Amsterdam is the epitome of that, and I like
Yeah.
that.
Maybe last question about travel. Like, what was the best meal that you've had? Who were you with? What was it? Where was it? Anything that you can share about food, the best meal?
Yeah. You live right by Ramen Tatsuyua, right? Yes, yes. I didn't like ramen until I went to Japan, and so I was in Kyoto, and I had the best ramen I've ever had. And of course, the food was good, and it was perfectly salted and seasoned, and you know the right broth and all the things. But it's more about the experience and the people that were there. You know, meals are obviously a sacred place to build a relationship, and I think that just hit all the nails in the head with the right type of food, with the right type of people, in the right city. And so Kyoto is definitely probably my second favorite city outside of Amsterdam that I've been to recently.
Where is Kyoto?
It's Japan,
Yeah, but the related in relation to Tokyo, north.
south.
Oh,
Keep
south.
going south. Yep.
Okay. Well, now you can have a little bit of Kyoto here when you go to Ramen
Right.
Tatsuya.
That's right.
Okay, so let's switch gears to hard moments, things that you remembered from. No, life has these things called monster moments, right? So tell me about a difficult or dramatic experience other than the experience in Iceland that changed you forever. It could be an injury, a business failure, a loss, something that was really hard for you.
Yeah, I've had a lot of business failures. So I think I've started 5 companies, and two have been massively successful, and three have failed. But there's no like one moment when a business fails that I've noticed. It's kind of like an economy or anything big. It takes a long time to build it up, and it takes a long time for it to degrade. You know, there's no one call you get where it's over. At least I haven't experienced that. And so I've had a lot of challenging situations where it's like knowing when to let go and looking in the mirror when it's time to let go of these businesses, but nothing like that stands out to what you're saying. That said, I have had very traumatic moments or moments that defined my outlook on life. And I was telling you this when we had our coffee just like 2 weeks ago, is when I figured out I had testicular cancer. And so this is a relatively new story. I found out 2 years ago. I just had like a gut feeling something was off. I had like this sore pain in my groin. And so went to a doctor. They said everything was good. I got a physical, and basically they said like, yeah, you have this inflammation here, but it's not like anything of concern. But while you're here, do you want to get imaging done? And so I said, of course. I mean, I've never planned to be back here. You know, might as well see what my insides look like down there. And so with that said, they scanned it and they found something in the other testicle, not the testicle I went in for, the other testicle that was growing in the inside. And so I think that was just my moment. I've always felt like invisible. I've always felt really on top of my health. I've never really felt like old. And that was a moment where I just was very jarred because I got that testicle removed the next day. So it was one night when I found out to when I had the surgery. And so that was kind of just incredibly jarring. And I realized, you know, people always tell you when they have a near death moment or someone dies close to them how fragile life is. I think that was my very much so like, okay, I'm very fragile. Wow, humbled.
Wow, I want to share some empathy there. I mean, yeah, those are things that you can't control, but when you control how
Yeah,
you seek help, and I'm so glad that you did it how you did it, because ironically, you know, you went for the other thing and you came
right.
out.
Life's
Yeah,
funny like that.
my dog, I love my dog. He
Yes.
had a little scar, and I was like, it's kinda bothering him, and I didn't think it was a big deal, and when I went in, the doctor said, "Well, that's fine, but I feel something else here, it doesn't look good," and it was a little tumor, like, and, it wasn't. bad, but I went in for that, and luckily they found that, so I was able to get him in next day, and you know, and and now he's fine. But it's I don't know, intuition with those things. Just
Yeah,
you gotta listen to that.
yeah. It's like the second brain, right? Like your gut
Yeah.
and following your gut. But you're
Rob,
yeah,
what's one random skill or hobby you're surprisingly good at?
rollerblading. Yeah, when I was a kid, I used to do like semi like professional, like I got there was points when I got paid for rollerblading. And so think like jumping huge staircases or grinding handrails, like inline skating. And so yeah, very good on my feet. I can't catch a ball, but man, you should see me wakeboard or skateboard or rollerblade or anything where it's like the lower center of gravity. It's definitely my
Love that.
thing. And that goes in like,
You let the rope out and you do flips on when you do wakeboarding?
oh, yeah, yeah. I mean, I have a really good backflip and a really good front flip and a really good rodeo on a wakeboard. But yeah, I can do flips on pretty much anything.
Yeah. I wanna learn. Okay, bigger question, but don't overthink it. What does happiness mean to you?
I have this, I mentioned my goals earlier, right? Like I kind of map out my entire plan for life. It's not that intense. It's more so to keep me focused. And I think happiness for me at this stage of my life is having like at least a quarter of my life be where I'm just being. I'm not a human doer, I'm a human being. Like I'm just still and I'm present. If I look back on my life and I ultimately, try to have that perspective, hey, when I'm old and in my deathbed, what do I want to not regret? And I think what I would regret is not being present. And so to answer your
Mm,
question more concisely, I want like at least a quarter of my time to be just where I'm not thinking about what's next. I'm not trying to be productive. I'm not trying to be a human doer. I'm just allow myself to be a human being
love that.
present.
What gives you genuine joy?
What gives me genuine joy? Yeah. I mean, outside of the obvious things like adventure and good food and all the things, I like seeing people respond to something for the first time. And so, if I like a really good hike in the Greenbelt here in Austin, I take somebody on that hike, which is maybe a little bit, you have to propel, or maybe you have to climb through a hole or climb or scale a wall, without a rope. Like seeing them experience that, I think is something that gives me genuine joy. Even if I've done it 100 times, if they've done it once, I think that's what brings joy.
Yeah. We talked about happiness earlier. How do you protect your happiness when things get really chaotic?
Yeah. Systems and frameworks. This goes back to that goals, framework. I lay out my time management strategy. And so I don't know how else to do it unless I'm very strict and I have a system. So for example, I don't look at my phone usually between 4 p.m. and 8 p.m. And it's not that I'm like, I have great mental strength. I just put my phone in another room, like I have these systems. Um, Yeah, or at night, I don't put my phone by my bed. The world is so noisy, and it's only noisy through your phone. I do believe you can find peace in this world if you have control and systems around your phone. So at night, my phone, Barack Obama could call me. I wouldn't even know it because my phone's not in range for me to hear it. So just different things with my phone. I have different
Um,
strategies with my phone to protect my peace. I'll leave it in bags, intentionally. Like I even sometimes like lose my phone for fun. Like I'll put it somewhere random and I'll be like, now you got to find, like I'll do it when I'm multitasking and be like, now you got to find it and just random stuff with my phone. I play games.
Such a simple, hard, but
Hard.
the nugget that I've learned so much already through just listening, Rob. And this is why it's so good to just have a structured time to,
Yeah.
have a conversation. Best book you've read recently?
Whew. Well, if you're looking to get frameworks around your life, I think The Daily Stoic's a great bite-sized channel to do so. So it's by Ryan Holiday. He's a local Austin guy here. He lives in Bastrop, actually. And so he's got a great story of how to tell modern Stoicism. I keep talking about Stoicism, but Stoicism to me is just like a great foundation, a great philosophy for life. Um, I think it's very easy to read and comprehend, but the challenge comes in practicing it. So the Daily Stoics basically one page, it's a simple lesson around control. There might be like a paragraph on bringing to life what you can and can't control in that day, and then you apply that lesson and then you're on to the next one. So it's less about like reading a bunch, it's more about reading something and then applying it. So I think that's a great like entry kit to Stoicism.
Love that. Yeah, I can see the thread, the theme of Stoicism, and I'm very curious about it. What about a podcast or a documentary that made you think differently?
Outside of the path forward,
outside of the path forward?
Podcast. Oh man, I listen to so many podcasts. This is a good one. I'll go documentary. Have you ever seen Icarus?
Icarus.
About
Gosh,
biking and doping with biking?
I think I have. I think I have.
Let me go one you've seen. Have you seen The Last Dance? Similar concept with Michael
I saw the
Jordan.
last 10 miles.
What's
It's
that?
probably similar. I haven't seen the last 10 miles. This Ironman, amateur Ironman that hadn't done the full race, just wanted to do it under 10 hours. Sorry, the last 10 hours. Fascinating.
You want to do an Ironman in 10 hours?
As someone that is not a professional, he
Wow.
wanted to do it. Yeah. And
I've
it
done
tells the
one
story,
in
the
15
journey, the
hours.
relationships.
5 hours better than my time. Nice. Okay. Mine's similar from like a civilian point of view. The Last Dance is the documentary on Michael Jordan. I'm not a ball sport guy, but Michael Jordan, that documentary captures so well what it takes to win and the mindset to win. And not that I'm like a win at all costs type guy, but it shows you like the mental discipline and the consistency and controlling what you can control, the theme of this podcast, all these things. And I think it's really easy to like embody that energy after that. So The Last Dance, the story of Michael Jordan is, yeah, relentless.
Love it. Okay. So I've known you for, gosh, almost 10 years.
Yeah.
And I can tell you that through this conversation, I've learned more about you than what I've learned throughout the last 10 years. So one lesson for people is just take the time to sit down and ask meaningful questions. Be curious, like what you said at the beginning. It's such a gift. And I'm going to close everything up with some really big questions. And again, don't overthink this, but Rob, why are you here? What's your why?
Think about this one a lot. So I believe that while I'm unique, I'm not special. There's 8 billion people on the planet and I'm one of them, right? And so my why and why I operate is to have a unique path, is to have a unique journey, is to live a great story. I believe in existentialism, which is basically like you have to create your own meaning, you have to create your own purpose. Like there is no innate purpose. If you do think you have purpose, I think there's a lot of ego in that like I have to have an identity and I have to do something bigger than myself, but I think you have to create that. And so my why is I know I'm not necessarily unique, so I'm going to create my own path so I can get meaning and so I can feel really attached to my life and live a life where at the end of it I feel like I'm like sliding in and I'm like, whoo, that was a journey, that was crazy, I'm done, I'm spent.
Yeah, you left the empty tank at the end.
Yes.
All right, so that was the why. We're gonna go into the what and the how, like sort of like
Whew.
Simon Sinek, like
Okay, I like
framework.
it.
That's why. What do you want to leave behind? What's the mark that you want, to leave behind that inspires other people?
Such a great question. I keep talking about my goals and how I have all these systems packaged and I have this master plan, all these things, but I think my purpose and my like what I want to leave behind, I actually wrote that down for 2026 as something I need to figure out. But with that said, I have some ideas. And so a few things I want to leave behind. One is like what I was saying, my why is like that it's okay to live a unique story. I think with culture and with social media and all these things, I think we kind of get groomed and harnessed into like this is how you should be or this is what's cool. But I actually think what's more original or more impactful or a story well lived is where you're unique to your own drum. You march to the beat of your own drum and you live a great story. So I think that's my purpose one and what I want to be remembered for is living a great story. Number two is got to be something on the planet. I do believe we're frogs that are in a boiling pot of water and that something's got to give with the world. I think people pray to all these gods, but it's crazy. We don't, pray to this magical thing we have that's Earth. And so I eat meat, I drive a car, I have a footprint on this earth. So that's why I'm really big into the single-use plastic thing, because I think that's so obvious that like we should clearly look for other packaging and other exposure than single-use plastic. So I want to leave something with the earth, whether it's a company or just leave a mark with like, hey, this is something that we improved or that we should be paying attention to. I don't really know about that channel yet. I'm still figuring that out, even though I have my 4Ocean business that is basically about taking plastic out of the ocean.
Love that. All right, so how are you living that purpose right now? What actions are you taking that prove it?
For which one? The live unique story or for the single-use plastic
How
one?
about both? But let's start with the single-use plastic because I think that's very practical. Yeah, prove it. What actions are you taking now?
Yeah. People think it's like reduce, reuse, recycle.
Yeah,
You know, it's really like refuse, reduce, recycle, rot in that order. And so I refuse single use plastic wherever I can. Obviously, I use single use plastic. I use plastic, right? You can't avoid it. But wherever I can, at a restaurant or when I'm getting takeout or whatever, maybe small things, I always say on the phone if I'm with them, please don't, I don't need any single use plastic. I don't need a bag, things like that, just to start to get those people to think of like, oh yeah, this is kind of weird that we give out silverware, even though you're probably taking this food to your house to eat it with metal silverware or like water bottles, like obviously only using metal water bottles, things like that. Little small actions, voting with little small actions every day. Otherwise, yeah, I mean, I love walking. I love dopamine. Best way to get dopamine while you're walking is to pick up trash while you're walking. It's the best feeling. And your whole neighborhood loves it, and you'll be known as like the trash guy. So I'm the trash guy in my neighborhood. I'm always picking up trash, and I have these awesome tongs and this bag. And so I just do little things. It's not like I have this master grand plan. Yeah, I work for 4Ocean, which has pulled 30 million pounds plus of plastic out of the ocean. And that's really cool to do big partnerships with them so companies are offsetting not only their carbon footprint but thinking about how they offset their plastic footprint. But at the end of the day, it's little things in my soul that
yeah.
just like kind of tickle me.
Gosh, love that. All right, Rob. I could talk to you for many more hours. So let's do this again. Maybe we don't need to do another recording, but I want to do this again to follow up with you. Anything else that you'd like to share with folks to help get to know you better?
No, I want to comment on what you said. Like, you've known me for 10 years and we've been talking for 56 minutes and you've learned more about me than you have in that entire duration of 10 years. I think that's a really good point, a really good theme of like, how do you actually build relationships and how do you actually find your purpose and how do you actually find depth and meaning in your life and all these things. And I think the lost art is a real good conversation, an authentic, raw conversation where you're not just talking about surface level things like sports or fads on social media or these things that don't actually really matter, where you can sit down with somebody and drill deep. Like that's where real connections made, real impacts made, real purpose is found, all the things. And so I'm looking in the mirror as I'm saying this because I think this is something we all could do better. But this world is just, it's so distracting and it's so like little like clickbait here and, distraction there. It's just like, how do you actually have real connection? And I think it's simple things. I think we make it bigger than it is. It's put your phone in the other room and pay attention to your room that you're in and the person you're with in that room. You don't have to ask really deep questions. That's great, but they'll flow naturally if you're actually present. And so, I don't know, you ask about meaning, all these things. For me, it's just like, I just want to be present and enjoy life and leave a good trace or leave no trace. And so, yeah, that's my close.
No, there is a script. There is a script. I've learned so much, and you inspire me to just do it, right? I mean, you don't have to overthink things. Like, let's just have a
Yeah.
conversation. Let's record it. Let's see who may benefit from your journey, some of the things that you've shared here. So I am so thankful. Um, I am so grateful that you are in my life, and I want to do more things with you. And you are an inspiration to our community in Austin, the world, and let's just keep on moving.
Heck yeah. Yeah, likewise, man. It's always good feeling and knowing your energies in South Austin. And so I hear your name a lot from all these random people. I'm always like, how do you know Andre? It's like, what? That's so random. But like, yeah, I know him too. So that's fun. Next podcast, it's going to be goal season soon. I talked a lot about goals, how do you make goals and how do you actually stick to them? We all know nobody sticks to their goals and, they're, what's it called? New Year's resolutions, right? They're all dead by February. So I have like this interesting framework on how to create goals and how to package them and stay consistent with them. Maybe that'd be a good next
Yeah,
topic.
let's do it. Of course. And you and I, let's bring someone interesting right from your
Ooh,
network, and you and I can
I love
um
that.
play tag and do the same thing, right? And the good thing about this technology is like you can bring people together, you can make the sound look good. It's just um it's just a matter of doing it. So
Sweet. Yeah, dude, I can't believe you sent me that selfie of us at like grabbing coffee. We weren't even
yeah,
talking and like the software, like I'm like,
I
whoa.
know. I know. we can do things today that in my lifetime I thought I could. So until next time, this is
Until
Andre,
next time.
and this is Path Forward.